Hi everyone, I'm Mike Crowe, one of the founders of Mitten Getaways Glamping Company. Welcome to the podcast, The Mitten Minute, our glamping journey, where we discuss various aspects of our journey to open a glamping resort here in Eastern Michigan. Sometimes my wife joins us, but taking care of our two daughters and growing a third one consumes a lot of her time and energy, so she won't be with us today. Our show is produced by Woodall's Campground Magazine and is sponsored by Outdoor Alliances, which provides digital marketing services to campgrounds, RV parks, and glamping properties. Last week, we talked about how we had to give up on the land we had secured back in May. Not something we were thrilled about, but we're pressing on. This week, I'll recap our glamping stay at a place called Getaway The Thumb, another glamping operator that apparently also saw good reason to use Getaway in their name. Unlike our glamping trip to South Haven earlier this summer, we thought we'd bring our girls with us this time. If Getaway does sound familiar, it's because we did a podcast episode on their reservation system and our booking experience about a month ago. We explained a little bit about their model, but now we can actually talk about it based on firsthand experience. So, to catch you up, Getaway The Thumb is part of a national chain of glamping resorts, all with a similar model. Ours was located just outside the village of Columbiaville, which is about where the thumb attaches to the rest of the hand. Again, how we describe Michigan. It had almost 50 glamping sites, each with a glamping trailer of about 200 square feet of interior space. Inside, we had a kitchenette, a full bath, seating for 4, and 2 queen beds, with one of those beds lofted above the other. They also have glampers with just 1 queen bed when you have a party of 1 or 2 people, but that's about the only difference between their accommodations. Otherwise, they're all identical. Outside, our trailer was a picnic table, a camp chair for each person. We had 4, and a fire pit. During our stay, we found things that were relatable and not so relatable to our plans for Mitten Getaways. We also found things we considered thoughtful and somewhat inspiring. So first, with relatable, it was that the resort was very secluded and the individual glamp sites were spaced out. We didn't see any residents on surrounding properties, and our fellow glampers were mostly out of sight. We could see one up on a hill, but that was only if we peeked around our trailer. Other than that, we had privacy and couldn't hear any of the other guests our entire stay. And it probably helped that Getaway has a pretty strict policy on not being loud outside or playing music outside. That's something similar to what we planned for our resort and having quiet hours on top of that. Another relatable feature was having a kitchenette and a full bath, and the entire glamping unit was sealed, I guess for lack of a better word, and it was also heated and air conditioned. We've camped in seasonal tents in the past, and a wooden deck is commonly used as the base, which makes insulating and sealing out insects kind of a challenge. What Getaway offered aligned a little better with the no-bug, climate-controlled glamping that we envision for our resort. On the unrelatable side, Getaway does drive-up sites, which means there is some potential for hearing and seeing cars come past your glamp site. Because of the size of their property and a model that they use that minimizes staff, this is probably necessary. Fortunately, it wasn't a significant interference for us. Nonetheless, our plan is to have a guest parking lot and provide large gladiator wagons and golf cart rides to our guests in order to cut down on noise and light pollution from cars traveling across the property. Another unrelatable aspect was feeling a little crowded with 4 people in our trailer. For our property, our resort, our smallest planned accommodation, the covered wagons, we think will likely be about 50 square feet larger. We thought 4 would be the max for those wagons on our resort, the max number of guests, and that was really solidified with our experience at Getaway in their trailers. Finally, and probably the biggest thing missed for us were the activities. Besides the usual things you can do at a campsite, campfire, grilling, s'mores, about the only other thing to do on the resort was a small amount of hiking. There were gravel roads that you could walk on, and then a couple of trails each, not longer than about a half a mile. This wouldn't be much of an issue if there were things to do off-site, but the location is in a very rural area, so there's not a lot of things to do in the surrounding towns. And this really drove home the importance of our decision to provide plenty to do on-site. We wanted our guests not to have to venture off-site to find activities and be able to just entertain themselves and relax on our property. On the plus side, Getaways designers did seem to provide a lot of attention to detail for the guest experience. Prior to our check-in, the resort's management system opened up a text message channel of communication with us, and we were sent a map of the resort, given a heads up on the check-in process. We were also able to ask some questions via text, like what was included in their s'mores kit, for example, and they responded back promptly, so that was a good feature to their process. When we arrived, we were welcomed by a handwritten note inside our glamper. And though the Crowes don't have a dog yet, it was nice that they provided a leash and a dog dish for those people that do travel with their furry friends. Some other thoughtful things included a desk fan for the upper bunk where it might get a little warm, a Bluetooth radio inside, dimmable lights, playing cards, and a rechargeable lantern to take outside around the campfire at night. Everything was well labeled, like there was this note by the sink engraved on a metal placard, for lack of a better word, and it kind of suggested that it might be a good idea to give a few minutes between showers to allow the hot water heater to regenerate. And they had a few other well-labeled things around the inside of the campsite. I suppose everything under the heading of thoughtful should also be inspiring, but I specifically grouped some things I observed together as inspiring, things we might just apply to our resort. They were first having the keypad locks or the smart locks, just one sink, not having a coffee maker, and extras that you were only charged for after checkout, presumably when housekeeping takes inventory. So first, the keypad locks. Now, this wasn't exactly something that newly convinced us that we wanted to use these on our resort, but it was very helpful for us to experience their execution rather flawlessly, as Getaway did. The day before our reservation, that text message that came through stated that when we got closer to our check-in the next day, we'd receive our code for the door. Then a couple hours before, we indeed did receive that code, and that handwritten note that we received upon check-in, or had inside our trailer upon check-in, asked us to enter a new code upon checkout. And the whole process worked. There were no keys involved, and we were happy with it. This confirmed us wanting to have not only this type of lock, but also a similar system of communicating the codes for it and updating them from glamper to glamper. And as much as I enjoy the hospitality aspects of having somebody there, I do love the option of being able to just go straight to my accommodation when I arrive there, not having to check in if I don't need to or don't need anything from the quote-unquote front desk. Second, under inspiration, there was just one sink, which was part of the kitchenette side. I suppose this made the bathroom, a half bath, since it only had a toilet and a stand-up shower. This actually made sense to me as definitely a way to conserve space in such a small glamping trailer. We already mentioned it felt a bit cramped with 4 people inside, so I was happy they didn't try and fit a sink inside the bathroom, when I could easily just take 2 steps outside the bathroom door and wash my hands in the kitchen sink. Another thing that was inspirational that conserved space was not having an actual coffee maker. There wasn't a Keurig, no Mr. Coffee, You might be thinking, what the heck? Got to have my coffee. But don't worry, there was still coffee. I actually suspect that the lack of a coffee maker was as much about saving space as it was about eliminating an appliance prone to wear and tear. So instead of the coffee maker, they provided a simple stainless steel tea kettle and these innovative coffee packets. What was cool about the coffee packets was that they had these hanging ears. I had to Google that to see what term I would use, but they called them hanging ears, so you could mount them on the rim of your coffee mug and pour the hot water over it from the tea kettle to make your coffee 1 cup at a time. Maybe I'm living under a rock, but I hadn't seen these before, and I thought they were really cool. Lastly, we appreciated that there were several things we could use and be charged for after we checked out. There were s'more kits, the coffee that I mentioned, and firewood, as well as fire starter. Of course, kept outside of the unit. They provided a nice little menu showing the prices of all the things that you could purchase. I mean, we'd love to have them for free, but it was nice to not have to pay for it in advance, but to use and pay for it as we go. We saw something similar at the fields with the shared market, I guess for lack of a better term, that they had there. There it was on an honor system. Anything you took, you wrote down on a clipboard and were charged for it upon checkout. We saw these as great additional revenue streams with low overhead since a staff person wasn't involved in every sale. Of course, there is a balance to these on-site extras. I don't think anyone wants to feel nickeled and dimed. So for Getaway, we paid such a low price for our stay that we didn't mind paying $12 for a couple of coffees and a bundle of firewood. For the fields, on the other hand, these items were included, the coffee, the firewood, which made sense given that we paid a higher price to stay there, and it's a different business model at the fields where service and hospitality are much more important. And their on-site extras were much more upscale things like craft beers and wine that you wouldn't expect to be complimentary. So those are our takeaways from our stay at Getaway. Even though we talked about some things that we couldn't relate to for our glamping resort, I did want to acknowledge that Getaway has a very different business model compared to what we're proposing for our resort. And they must be doing something right. Their expansion across the country continues. According to their website, they have 25 locations. I think the one we stayed at actually opened up earlier this year. And if you want a simple getaway and to disconnect and can entertain yourself and be outside in nature, I think Getaway is a really great option for that. So that's our show for today. Thanks for checking it out. You can listen to other episodes of the Mitten Minute at mittengetaways.com/minute. And if you have a request or suggestion for a future episode, feel free to email us at glampers@mittengetaways.com. The Mitten Minute, our glamping journey, is produced by Woodall's Campground Magazine and is sponsored by Outdoor Alliances. If you want to keep up with us between episodes, head over to mittengetaways.com/links. On next week's episode, we'll talk about our new strategy to identify land. We hope you'll join us then. Until then, have a great week.